Okay, there we go. So welcome. We're glad you are here. I'm Nicole Reilley, and we're going to start off by talking about how to grow in-person worship. And so a little bit about me to get a sense of who I am. Let's make sure. There we go. Okay, so if I haven't met you yet, I'm a United Methodist pastor with 30 years experience. I've served churches from 60 to 500, and I've always had a focus on church growth, on reaching new people. I am a house church planter as well, and helped to plant about 12 house churches, and then also led a house church for a couple years. I was the director of new ministries for our annual conference in the United Methodist Church in Southern California, Hawaii, Guam, and Saipan, which means that I basically worked with our churches to help them grow and also to start new faith communities. And I am the author of Expanding the Expedition Through Digital Ministry. I'm a coach for clergy is what I do now. And I'm also a social media manager for churches. And I host the Clergy Wellness Podcast. So the Clergy Wellness Podcast, if you're not familiar with it, is a podcast specifically for clergy. And it's a podcast in a way to kind of focus on what we deal with in the local church. And so here's some of our more recent episodes, and you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. So you may be able to tell that I am not feeling great today. I have a cold. I hope I've turned the corner on it. So I hope that my voice isn't too scratchy to hear, but I don't feel terrible, but I just sound pretty congested. So I have my hot tea and my cough drops, and I may mute myself occasionally if I have need to cough. So glad you're here today. I know we have about 30 people who signed up for today's workshop, and we'll also be sending this out online as a way to for you to share it with whoever if it's helpful to you today. So we're going to start by talking about just some basic realities that we're all facing. In the United Methodist Church, which is kind of the context I'll speak from, since that's what I'm most familiar with, although I'm familiar with other trends in the United States as well for churches. But in the United Methodist Church, since 1990, the United Methodist Church's in-person worship attendance has decreased by 40%. Now, I think that that's a helpful thing to know. I think sometimes as clergy and also as lay leaders, we look around and think, what did we do? And the reality is just things have changed, and that has caused attendance to change. Right now, the average United Methodist Church has 50 people in it when it gathers on a Sunday morning. So why are we here? Why are we dealing with this culture of decline? Well, there's some drivers. There's some things that have just happened that are part of the world. One of them is that the Cold War ended. I mean, that may sound like a weird one to start with, but there was a lot of pressure, probably few of us are aware of it, but pressure to go to church and to be part of that culture. And that was an important driver, and it probably artificially inflated worship attendance numbers because people were not able to stop attending worship. I mean, there was one of the articles I read that was really fascinating about this, talked about how there was such a pro-America, pro-Christian time in our country where people just did not stop attending church because they didn't want to be seen as anything other than pro-America and pro-Christian. Also, one of the hugest drivers of the decline in worship attendance is the rise of the internet. And this is because when the internet has started and has opened up the world to different people. So a lot of folks living in smaller communities only had the effect of those around them. The internet really just blew open the world. It really just changed everything and made such a huge difference for people, especially people in smaller towns, smaller communities, to connect with people who thought differently, who looked at the world differently. And then the third thing, this one article that I thought was just really quite right on said herd mentality is one of the big reasons people do not attend church. You know, the fewer people who attend, the fewer people who attend. So I think it's a reality. There's, of course, a lot more reasons, but there are a lot of cultural drivers. I remember in 1990, I served a church in Torrance, and the community right next to us was Redondo Beach. And I remember doing some demographic work at the time and finding out that between 75 and 90% of the people in Redondo Beach had never been inside of a church, not even for a wedding or a funeral. So, especially in Southern California, but I think, you know, this is a trend all around the country, is that there's just so many reasons why people are not coming to worship. So, in the midst of that, the church has an opportunity to respond, right? And the church's part in decline has been that we have often just said, I don't know what to do, or I'm not sure what a plan could be, or how would we move this forward? So a lot of our churches then have had a lack of a plan, a lack of an ability to think about how we're going to reach out, how we're going to welcome people, how we're going to incorporate people. So we have been part of the decline as well. There's cultural drivers, absolutely. But then that calls us as a church to respond. So what can we do? Right? What can we do? Well, I think there's a bunch of things that we can do. We can work to reach new people. We can work to welcome new people, and we can work to incorporate new people. And so that's what I want to talk about today, because I think we have to look at how do we reach new people? It's an important question, right? Many times we have no idea on how to reach new people because we haven't really even wrestled with the question. So the number one way, and you probably don't know this, is that the number one way people come to church is because they were invited by somebody. Our church attenders, our church members, those people who are part of a worshiping community, are the number one way new people will end up in worship, through their invitation, through their letting them know about the church. This is not just the number one way, but if you listed all the ways people come to church or find a new church, it's like being invited is like the number one way, and the number two way all the way down to like the number 99th way, meaning it's a huge part of it. It's really the foundational piece of it. Now, of course, there are other ways. People come to church because they see a paid ad on Facebook, or they see a banner in front of the church. All those things are super important too. But one of the reasons those things are important is because it helps the people who are in the congregation see that reaching new people is a priority. The church, the leaders, the pastors, the lay people have to be the ones who say reaching new people is a priority, and then equipping people to do this. So what I want to talk about, a lot of what we're going to talk about, is how do we reach new people with a particular focus on how to get our current congregation to invite? Because this is one of the hugest ways we move things forward, is to help our people learn how to invite, and not in like a weird way, right? Not in a weird way. Think of it like this. If you go to a restaurant and you love your experience, you love their food, you're going to share that with a friend, right? Or if there's a particular shop that you go to, you're going to talk with a friend about it. We have this habit already. We do this already, right? Like I was just at a gathering and someone was like, what's everyone watching on Netflix, right? So we need to help people do this in the local church as well. So I want to talk about getting your church to invite, and why a general invitation to Sunday worship isn't enough. So let's talk about that. A general invitation, just telling people, invite your friends to church next Sunday, is seldom enough because it feels very open-ended, right? It feels like they could invite them this Sunday or next Sunday or any Sunday. And in fact, the average United Methodist only invites one person every 38 years. That's actually a statistic. So a general invitation to worship seldom motivates people to invite their family and friends. And this is because they have this feeling like it's very open-ended and they could invite anytime. There's no specific thing. There's no invite for this. I was thinking about this in just a very practical way. I like the store J. Jill. It's a women's clothing store. And every August, they send me a postcard. And they tell me that if I come in that month and I spend money, they'll give me a 20% discount. And so I think about it, even though I don't probably need new clothes and I don't want to go to the mall. I'm thinking, 20% off. Maybe I should go. Now, this year they did this and I didn't go. The last week of the month, they actually called me on the phone and said, just a reminder, your 20% is only good through the end of the month. And so even though I probably wouldn't have gone shopping, that date, that specific focus got me to go to the store. So Sunday morning itself doesn't tend to be that compelling for a lot of people. We need to have something in addition, something special, something that they feel a little push, a little focus to invite. Now, church planners call these things community Sundays. Church planters are the people who are starting new faith communities. And so they're always looking for ideas on how do we get people to invite their friends and family to church. So these are events that happen during the course of a year that get people interested and focused on inviting. So I'm going to talk about community Sundays. And the big idea here is offering things throughout the year between 6 and 12 of these events that will help people invite to these specific things. Now, here's the big thing is some of what we're going to talk about, you probably already do, but you may not have this focus on getting people to invite to this event. So let's look at this. Let me take a little sip here. So I'm going to share with you 13 ideas. All of them are about connecting your church with people who are not part of your regular worshiping congregation. Some of them will have to do with Sunday morning, but others of them have to do with events outside of Sunday morning, so that you're building relationships and having a natural way to invite people to Sunday. Now, my slide says 12. And that's because I want to start with an event that is really kind of, I think, the mother of all of the community Sunday events. And it's often one we don't think about when we think about giving our people a reason to invite. So let's start with that. So Community Sunday event number 0, Relevant Sermon Series. Many United Methodist pastors preach what's called the lectionary. And there's nothing wrong with the lectionary. You can take the lectionary and put it into relevant sermon topics for sure. But I think if we want to reach new people, we have to offer a sermon series that connects with their life, that answers the questions that they're asking. For example, what are the top 5 concerns in their life, in the world, and what are the gospel's answers to that? Or a series, this was popular a while ago, a series called Unchristian, which is a series for skeptics. You know, is the church homophobic, or is the church sexist, or whatever it is? Also, a topic that is popular is a kind of a new year, new you. A lot of times people will have a goal to go back to church in the new year, or try church out in the new year. So offering something that would engage them. So in my slide, you'll see that there are some events. These are pictures of some sermon series: Burning Questions, It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Facing Life's Giants, and Jumpstart. So creating a postcard, something you can put in the hands of your people, mentioning it the week before the sermon, what the series is going to start, or mentioning it at the benediction, offering a prize. I saw a church that said, you know, bring people for this new series. And if you bring someone, you'll be entered in a drawing for, you know, summer beach chair. Something just fun and low key. If you do nothing else, this is a good place to start. Preaching relevant series for newcomers. So yeah, this takes a little bit of energy. Yeah, this takes a little bit of time. And no, you don't have to do it for every series, but at least offering a handful of these during the course of the year, things that will connect with new people, is essential. So that's Community Sunday idea number 0. Community Sunday idea number 1, Blessing of the Animals. A lot of our churches already do this, offering an opportunity drawing for a gift basket or card to get names of people giving a gift of some kind, like a homemade treat, and advertising about this event. Social media, next door, banner on the church. So remember, with all of these, the focus is not just doing the event, but sharing with your people that this is an event to invite a friend to. Community event number 2, Be Out There Sunday. This is a community service event, and this could happen on a Sunday morning. It could also happen on another day of the week. You could start off with worship in the sanctuary and go do things, or you could have a regular worship service and have things to follow the time of worship. Offer lunch to follow, a bounce house, things like this that will increase engagement, things that people can invite to. And have opportunities for families to serve, right? I think looking at how do we have a community Sunday that offers opportunities for a family to serve together and for people who may not be able to, go out into the community to do something, but who can go over to the fellowship hall and put together cards for soldiers or, kits for crises in the community, things like this. Community Sunday, idea number 3, Rise Against Hunger. A lot of churches are doing this. Rise Against Hunger is a company that provides churches and other organizations an opportunity to create meals for those who are experiencing either crisis or ongoing situations around hunger. So there's money that needs to be raised for this, about $3,500. So offering opportunities to fund the event as well as to work at the event, using social media and banners to spread the word, a focus and worship on the opportunity. Invite your friends to this. This is an opportunity for them to serve, and doing this right after church on a Sunday. Community Sunday event number 4, Blessing of the Backpacks. A lot of us do this one. Create a blessing card for backpacks that it hangs on their backpack all year with a prayer, with the church name, the hours of worship, something like that. Create a postcard to give family and friends so that there's more opportunity to share. Bless kids and teachers in the worship service. Link with the barbecue following worship service and give special food at fellowship. Sometimes you can't do a barbecue, but maybe you can do popsicles on the way out, and use social media to get the word out. Blessing of the Backpacks is one that a lot of our churches do already, but really focusing on getting the word out to the community is a great way to make it a community Sunday. Next, Community Sunday idea number 5, Candlelight Walk for ... So we live in a very broken world with a lot of things that are going on. So to have a candlelight walk in the community as a response to violence or a natural loss, you can use real candles, you can use battery-powered candles, start with a prayer, start with scripture, give participants a take-home sheet for additional ways to make a difference, and contact the local paper to cover it. This one is one that I think in particular is great for the community local paper to cover, because it's one of those kinds of things that tends to be a little more engaging to those that have no connection to the church. Okay. Next one, Community Sunday number 6, Aloha Sunday. In our United Methodist tradition, we have a thing where pastors are appointed, or you get a new pastor July 1st. Making that an annual event that's fun and enjoyable and upbeat helps, and it's something that gets people to invite as well. So we do an Aloha Sunday to welcome the new pastor or pastor for another year, Hawaiian theme with dress, with fellowship, giving out leis. Just making it feel like a party, celebrating the ministry of the pastor and the church as part of it. It's a great summer event, especially to get people who may be, not taking church as seriously as they might in the fall, to get them to be part. Community Sunday number 7. Now, this is one of my very favorites, and this comes from the last church I served. It's called the Advent Celebration. They would do a kickoff for the season of Advent, that first Sunday in Advent in the evening. They would offer dinner, crafts, a photo booth for your Christmas card, etc. This is a 1-hour piece of the event. But it's kind of like a VBS in that you're going to different stations and doing different things. Then at the second hour, you're offering a worship service. This is where you're decorating the trees together. You're teaching about the season, you're introducing the theme. So the first hour is having a meal, doing a craft, doing all those kinds of things. The second hour is a worship service in the sanctuary with all the music, all the choirs, all the fun, and kicking off the season of Advent. We would sell tickets for the first hour. The second hour was free since it was the worship service. And we would add a living nativity, getting our youth involved doing that. And then after worship would be cookies. So you would have that. Next, Community Sunday idea number 8, Christmas Eve. Most of us already do Christmas Eve, I'm going to guess. But see this service through a newcomer's eyes, right? How do we make this service memorable, amazing for a newcomer? This is a time of year to do a sponsored post or a Facebook ad. This is the time of the year to put up banners to welcome the community. Spend money. Make this always a Christmas to remember. And in the Christmas Eve service, offer a special invitation to come back in the new year. That's one of those sermon series that is really going to engage people and get them interested. So we all do Christmas Eve, but it's thinking of it through a newcomer's eyes and how we help our people to invite their friends to Christmas Eve. Community Sunday idea number 9, New Year's sermon series. So what will attract newcomers in the new year? I always like to start with Googling, what others are doing around this to inspire and to see kind of what's a way to approach the new year in a way that's engaging. Offer during this time some special things on your campus. So a tour of the campus, coffee with pastors, a class on parenting or grief, something, right, that's going to engage people, something that's as they come back after Christmas, they really get excited and they see and get to know more about the church community. Use social media and create postcards for this event. Number 10, Graduation Sunday. Also another one we do. Everybody does this in a way that I think really focuses on the grads, which is super great. Inviting other people who are graduating, who may not have a church home, can be a good bridge. Celebrate your grads of all ages. Offer special Bibles or a devotional gift or a college care package. Create videos of the graduates as they were children and now as they graduate. Invite a senior to speak and share their faith. Offer a special blessing and offer special resources for the parents in the season of transition. Oftentimes we're very focused on the graduates, which is great, but those parents are often vulnerable in this season and are looking for something to help them as well. Community Sunday number 11, Lenten kickoff. So we talked about the Advent celebration. This is a similar idea, but happens in Lent. And the whole idea is that we want to get everyone excited about the season of Lent to help them see this as a real opportunity to grow their faith. So create a focus for Lent, which includes small groups, have an Ash Wednesday dinner and a kickoff, set the theme in worship and create expectations for what God can do, have small group signups. And I always think of Lent as that time to invite people to do some big things. So, 40 days of prayer or reading the Bible in 40 days or the New Testament in 40 days. So something that really is a Kickstarter for people's faith and will help them think about who they might invite on that journey with them. And then the last one in this part of our little presentation, Community Sunday idea number 12, host special trainings. A lot of the United Methodist churches that are in Southern California are churches that are either progressive churches or are looking to be LGBTQI allies in some way. Even if that isn't your church, there are trainings that you can host that help your community, your church community, be in service to the wider community. So that may be an LGBTQI ally training, maybe something on autism, or dealing with the increasing rate of suicide. Do publicity and create postcards for the congregation, letting them know this is a time to invite somebody, invite them to church, and then right after we're doing this event. Have a sign in for the event to track newcomers, get email addresses, and then offer next steps. So if you're doing a suicide support group, you might look at a opportunity to connect people in that, or some kind of Zoom follow-up class, or even a resource list. So here's what's essential in all this. Remember to get the word out. Use social media, postcards, banners, paid advertising. Get leaders to beat the drum on these. Mention what's happening weekly. I always like to do it before I started the sermon each week. I would mention what was coming up and how this was their opportunity to invite. If I was using a postcard, I would have the ushers come forward and hand out the postcards right then, so people had them. And then follow up after each one. Review each community Sunday and ask, who did we reach? How did we connect to them? And what did we learn? So all three of these, getting the word out, mentioning weekly, and following up, are so important, because it's really often the missing piece, right? We may come up with ideas, things that we want to do, or things we think will gather new people, but we don't do all of the pieces. I think especially the follow-up, that's the real learning piece. Like, what did we do? How did it work? And what do we need to tweak for our next event? So these are some key things. And I want to just touch briefly on some things that, as you're inviting and welcoming newcomers, to think about these pieces, which I'm sure you already know, but just for a quick review. Look at your social media. If you're working on growing your in-person worship attendance, look at how you're doing with social media. You don't have to have a social media manager, but you should have an ability to post regularly. Your posting is not only about inviting people to church, which I think is an important post each week, sharing about an event that's coming up, that's also really helpful. But I think also, who are your community partners that you can post about what they're doing, their fundraiser, their event that's happening, a way we can show Bridge to Home or Family Promise our support. Also, make sure your website's correct. This is often a big thing in our churches, is that we aren't looking at our website, so it can get out of date. So as you're going to work to grow your worship attendance this fall, take some time and look at your website, and then calendar looking at it every other week to make sure it stays current. Check out your Google reviews, Yelp, also Facebook. Newcomers look at these things, and you should too. If there hasn't been a review in a while, look at who you might ask personally to do a review. Banners. If you have a building, and I know not all of us do, but if you have a building, using a banner that changes like every week or so is a great way to get attention. If you're on a public street especially, it's a huge deal in building people's awareness. Online worship. I want to just say, most of us still do online worship, and online worship is super important because it's often the preview before people will come and visit us in person. Now, one thing I want to mention is the sermon. There was a study done. Let me get the number so I can. A recent Gallup study found that 76% of people who attend church at least once a month say the sermon that teaches them more about scripture is the primary reason they go to church. 75% also listed the sermon that helps them connect their beliefs to their life as a major factor in attending. So preaching is the number one reason people go to church. And I know we kind of think like, oh, they come for the music, or they come for the community, or they come for the service, or they come for the children or youth. Those things are important. I'm not saying don't do those things well, but I'm saying the sermon really needs to be great. The sermon really needs to be focused. The sermon really needs to say something about the Bible, and it really needs to connect to how people are going to live. So there's no substitute for a good sermon. So just take a moment, and I want you just to think about what we've talked about so far. We've talked about 13 kind of community events. And I'd like you just to, if you're taking notes, just to write down what's one thing you'd want to try. So what's your plan? Set it, and then set on when you're going to work on it. So let's just take a moment to pause, and I'm going to get a cough drop. Okay. So now let's talk about welcoming new people. Inviting new people is key. And then we get to help our people learn how to welcome as well. So key piece so far, helping our people learn to invite. Next piece, helping people learn to welcome newcomers. Now, is it natural to welcome people? I don't think so. I mean, my experience in local churches, people have a lot of trouble with new people. I'm not sure why that is, but I've seen it so many times that, yes, there are those people in our churches who are super great with welcoming, but a lot of people are not. A lot of people are put off by new people, uncomfortable with new people. And so I think it's important to look at how we help people welcome. In my first month at one of the churches I served, I received a letter from a woman in the community. She said that before I got into the church, she had visited the church I was serving several times. And she said, "Good luck to you. These are the most unfriendly people I've ever met in my whole life." And she actually wasn't wrong. They were a pretty unfriendly group of people. But I think even people who are friendly, even people who are loving and kind and generous, sometimes can have trouble welcoming new people. So how can we help this? How can we help people do this? I think we can help people develop the skill of welcoming. And there's some things we could do to help our congregation shift to being more welcoming. First thing I want to talk about is the importance of normalizing welcoming new people and helping people learn how to do this in a sermon series. It may be a series on hospitality, maybe a series on welcoming, but even if you don't do a series on it, making sure to talk about how we welcome new people is an important piece. How God has welcomed us, how God accepts us, and how we're called to welcome and accept others. You might tell stories, about situations where you did not experience a great welcome. Many times I think people don't make space for newcomers because they don't even really think about newcomers, right? They're just thinking about their own lives, their own situations, and they're not really thinking about what it's like to be a new person at a church. So doing a series that helps raise that awareness, I think, is helpful. Sharing stories in worship about this. We talked about that briefly, sharing about what it's like to be welcomed well, what it's like to be not welcomed very well. Having people who are part of the church share about that, I think, is more powerful than just us sharing about that. Leadership training. I think it's really a piece of our church culture to have our leaders be trained regularly about hospitality, about how to welcome new people. You know, many people are introverts and they're just not geared toward welcoming newcomers. And even people who are extroverts, who might be a little more relaxed and welcoming, sometimes extroverts are so focused on themselves that they don't stop talking either. So I think everybody needs help and leaders need help. On the screen, The Art of Hospitality, I think, is a really great book. It not only has a book, but it has like a workbook and it has a video series and it has a whole bunch of different pieces that I think can be really helpful. Book study for the church to widen the understanding and how to help welcome better. And then a couple practical things, greeters in the sections. So if you have pews or you have chairs, a lot of times people tend to sit in the same area. So finding someone in each of the areas or sections of your church's seating who are welcoming people and having them connect and connecting others, I think, is a huge, easy way to do it. Welcome table. Most churches have a welcome table these days, but if you don't, it's something to consider. Having a table where you can direct a newcomer to, so that they receive a small gift and information as well, to get connected. Meet the pastors. One of the things I've learned in the last couple of years is that when people come to church, one of the relationships people are looking to make is to connect with the pastor. And so many churches will have the tradition that the pastor stands at the door and greets people as they leave. But what if you turned it upside down and said, after church, I stay up front. And if you're new, I'd love for you to come up and connect. I'd love to say hi and welcome. Something to think about. And then follow up. Welcoming new people and keeping track of them can be hard. I mean, if you are a relationship savant, and I know some of you are, you're probably able to keep track of everybody and keep track of who's who and who's related to whom and where do they live and all that kind of stuff. But I am a great believer in the power of the Google or the Excel spreadsheet. So this is the spreadsheet I used at my last church, and it's just an idea. But the idea is to track people as they visit. If someone leaves you information, you should be using that information. So if someone leaves a phone number, you should call that phone number or text that phone number. Someone leaves email, you should email them. And then putting together a flow, a system. You know, when someone visits, they get a postcard. When someone visits, they get an email. When someone visits, they get a phone call. When someone visits, they get invited to a small group. When someone visits, they get invited to an opportunity we have at the church to serve. So everybody's going to do the spreadsheet differently. But I think in today's world, if you really want to build your visitors and you really want to increase your in-person worship attendance, you need to track it. So let's take a minute and think about, what is your plan for welcoming the new people who attend? How will you help your church people become more welcoming? How will you help your leaders grow in becoming more welcoming? So just take a moment and think about what you will do there. Okay. So this is the last thing we're going to be talking about: incorporating new people. So you've helped your congregation learn how to invite. You've helped everybody learn how to welcome. And now the third piece is, how do you incorporate those people into the life of the church? I want to share some ideas that I have found to be really practical and really workable. So what connects people? I bolded two of these because I think these are the two biggest things that connect people. The first is small groups. Small groups are key in any church, and they are the number one way new people get incorporated. The United Methodist Church was founded on small groups. The Methodist movement is the original small group movement. So for us to connect new people, having a small group that they can connect to is the number one way to do it. Now, I know a lot of churches don't have small groups, that they struggle to get small groups started, that it just feels like one more thing. But the easiest way I have found over the years to start new small groups is to create a couple discussion questions for the sermon, and to invite people just to get together and discuss the sermon and answer those questions, and to have some time to share about their lives and to eat a meal together. Something that simple. The second thing that I think really connects people is serving together. Coming together to serve is just so huge, right? It's a way for people to have fun together. It's a way for people to work together as a team, whether that's the choir or the band or the ushers, or working in the community at the community grocery store, the homeless shelter. Getting people to serve helps people build relationships. It's key in connecting and integrating people into the life of the church. Here's some other ways that we connect people. Fellowship time weekly. One of the important things we can do is offer some kind of even very casual fellowship time before church and after church. Doesn't have to be fancy, it can be just coffee, but that kind of thing gets people to connect to one another. Testimonies. People need to be able to share their faith stories. One of the ways people become close to one another is by hearing each other's stories, whether that happens in the sermon or that happens as part of worship or that happens in small groups. Testimonies really make a difference. Retreats. Working with a church right now that did its first family camp, and they had a great time, and they had an opportunity to get to know each other and to build relationships. It was a family camp that they did, but a men's retreat or a women's retreat, family camp, they're all places to start, and they make a huge difference in getting people connected to one another. Having meals together. One of the things that I think happened with COVID is we just stopped eating together as much. And I think it's time to, revise that, revitalize eating together. Some churches have traditions, potlucks. Other churches have traditions of bringing in a catered meal, whatever's appropriate. Having people sit together. And I find one of the things that's helpful is having a couple questions on the table. So people have a focus for their conversation if they struggle with that. Social media. Social media is a great way to connect people. We connect people, the wider church through social media, but we also can connect people through a Facebook page group. No, so page is the outside one. Group is the inside one. A group is a Facebook inward-facing group that allows people to share their prayer concerns, or if they need transportation, or what's going on. So it's more of an internal way, and I find it's a great way for introverts to get more connected to one another. Introducing people. So one of the things I find helpful in a church is if you have a couple of people who are connectors, right? They're the folks who will get to know a newcomer and then introduce them to other people. Oh, you have kids that age? Meet this person. Oh, you like to quilt? Meet this person. That kind of connections. If you are someone who is a person who likes to introduce people to others, or you appreciate that, I think related to that is the idea of inviting people to things you're part of. So like I go to the Monday night Bible study. Have you ever tried that? I'd like to invite you. And then one last one, one-on-one with the pastor or leaders. You know, people are looking to connect with those who are leading the church. And so offering them a way to connect with one another in a more, one-on-one kind of way is huge. There's a lot of ways you can do that, of course. You could do that with coffee, or you could do that with lunch, or whatever, but however it works. So take a minute and then think, what is your plan for integrating people? What idea jumped out at you that you might want to try? Just take a moment. Okay. So what can we do? Right? There's a lot that is outside of our control, right? There's a lot that as pastors, the culture has changed. What people do and don't do has changed. People's rhythms after COVID have changed. But there are things that we can do to reach people. There are things that we can work on. So what can we do? We can work to reach new people. We can help our own congregation learn to invite. We can welcome new people. We can help people when they come feel welcome. And we can incorporate new people. We can get people to be part of the congregation and to get incorporated into the congregation. So I hope that you heard a couple things today that gave you ideas. And one of the things I want to finish up with is there is no right thing. There is really just us trying a variety of things to see what it is that works best for us. What works in your environment isn't going to be the same as what works in somebody else's environment. Instead, it's about figuring that out and figuring out what works for you. So there we go. So a couple questions. Yes, I used the Kinnaman book Unchristian for that series. Can you steal my sermons? Yes, of course you may. I will send them to you. And yes, the person who started the family camp was Lydia Sohn at Walnut. And I don't know if there's any other questions. But I appreciate your time. And if I can help in thinking these things through a little more, you want to bounce a couple ideas off me, I'm happy to do that as well. But thank you for joining me today. And I hope that you heard some ideas that inspired you as you grow your in-person worship attendance this fall. Thanks for joining me. Have a great day.